There's nothing that I wouldn't do.
For your attention, please. Can I have your attention, please? Everybody just look at me. Everybody just look at me. I day trade attention. Shout out to Gary V. Respond to every mention. You can find me on your FYP before. Up, everyone, and welcome to Let's Be Clear with Just Wayne. I am Just Wayne. Listen, this week Drake dropped not one, not two, but 3 albums, and the response has been all over the place. Donald Trump also continues to turn the White House into what feels less like a government and more like a loyalty rewards program. And I'm so excited to be able to have a guest, Amber Sherman, this week to talk about All Roads Lead South and how we are collectively pushing back against the finesse that is this country. But before we get to our main story and that conversation, we have to deal with some of the highlights from this week and the headlines from this week. And we do that in the segment that we like to call The Rundown. All right. This week was fascinating for me as a person who gets on here and talks about music because we have all been anticipating Drake's Iceman for a very long time. And people were surprised when Drake ended up announcing that it wasn't just one album, but that it was 3. And 43 tracks in total, way too much music to listen to at one time, but it felt less like an album rollout, more like somebody who's trying to beat allegations through volume. Now, 3 things I knew were going to be the case with this release. The first thing is that all eyes were going to be on the music because this is his first solo release since he went to battle with Kendrick. The second thing I knew was that the response was going to be all over the place because you have Drake loyalists and Drake haters and everyone in between. And it's not just about Drake anymore. It's about what he presents himself to be. And third, regardless of the quality, Drake fans were going to declare victory because of the numbers alone. And for a second, it looked just like that, like the numbers were going to be incredible. Spotify announced that Make Them Cry had become the most streamed song on a single day, only to later say, actually, we tried to do the count manually, and when we did that, we accidentally added multiple songs, which is a pretty big mistake for someone like Spotify to make. And also add in the fact that they not only added it wrong, but that they said that it was the biggest song by far. So you have that. They announced it before the streaming day had ended, and all of these things were happening. And of course, you had Drake fans running around yelling, Drake still got it. And honestly, the retraction never gets the traction of the original headline. So now Drake fans are going to hear this and call me a hater, and I get it. But I do think it's important to ask the question, who benefits from that headline? Because the objective in this release and this rollout was to try to beat Kendrick. And so coming around later with the retraction only does so much. And the reality is that over 50% of the streams fell off by the second day. That's a massive fall off. J. Cole, pun intended. And the reviews were all over the place. Some people called the album rushed. Some people called it unfinished. And some people called it a classic, which tells me that Drake discourse has become less about music and more about maintaining the idea of Drake, because his fans don't seem to just like him. They want to be him. So when he wins, they win too. One fan went as far as to say that when we're releasing this album, we got to make sure we're streaming it as much as possible. But also, there was one set of fans that I was not expecting when this album dropped, and that was the White House. Because on the day the Iceman dropped, the White House posted a graphic of the album cover with a MAGA chain. And then they followed it up by using the music from the album in a promo for ICE.
Iceman.
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 Which, given the state of the world right now, I didn't think it was a good idea in the first place to release an album called Iceman, because we've been experiencing immigrations and customs enforcement in their terror campaign across the country. And this has become a pattern for the administration. They keep using pop culture and music as propaganda, and sometimes they're doing it to vocally troll those they know are against them. And other times it seems like they're trying to signal alignment. but I don't know which it is. It's leaving us all guessing. Drake, can you help me out?
Which one? You want friends or success? Which one? Tell us how, man, spin this one. Play.
And speaking of scams that people keep buying into, Donald Trump continues to use the White House like a family business. The economy right now is rough. Gas prices are high. Groceries are expensive.
I hear so much about the word groceries. I used to use groceries a lot on the trail. A word, it's like sort of an old-fashioned word, groceries. But groceries is the word that's the most accurate word. And the price of groceries went through the roof. Bacon was levels like nobody's ever seen. You take a look at eggs today. I mean, the eggs are double, triple, quadruple. They're going through the roof. Now, there's some problems that may, a little outside problem with eggs maybe. But, we inherited a mess.
It's always, we inherited a mess. Joe Biden brought us so much, we couldn't do anything about it, but groceries. I want on groceries. Now, despite the fact that Trump ran on lowering the cost, almost every policy that he has brought forward has pushed prices higher. But instead of tightening the spending and trying to cut some of the fat, which is not a fat joke, Donald Trump is definitely 6'3", 240 pounds. He has never been lying about who he says he is or what it is. What he has done is reportedly wants to add $10 billion from the IRS. Take that because he's upset about the fact that his tax returns became public. The same tax returns that he promised for years that he would release voluntarily.
As far as my return, I want to file it, except for many years, I've been audited every year. 12 years or something like that. Every year they audit me. Nobody gets audited. I have friends that are very wealthy people. They never get audited. I get audited every year. I will absolutely give my return, but I'm being audited now for 2 or 3 years, so I can't do it until the audit is finished, obviously, and I think people would understand that.
I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is.
Always promising to release them. And it's wild to me that he ends up suing the IRS because his tax returns that he promised to put out got released. The thing he was promising to do. It's almost as if you, I don't know, got into a rap battle with somebody and you told them to talk about a certain penchant you had for a particular population of society. And then after all of that, when that person came outside and said those things about you, you sued. And let's just say hypothetically your name was Aubrey. Hypothetically. It was also reported that Trump has made millions trading stocks connected to industries that his administration directly impacts. And meanwhile, the DOJ announced over the weekend and into today that they have created a 1.776, yes, a 1776, $1.776 billion fund for so-called victims of Biden's weaponization of the DOJ, which in many cases means paying back January 6th participants. And honestly, these pardons, these payments, it's like a loyalty rewards program, and it all feels like accountability is being evaded completely. It's more like an incentive to do those things again. So because lawsuits, stock trades, crypto schemes, foreign gifts, like all these different ways to enrich himself, and the whole thing figures out to be this gigantic scheme. And I feel like there's so many schemes that I'm missing. Drake, can you help me out one more time?
What did I miss? What did I miss?
This has been The Rundown. Tonight centers around the midterm elections and once again the fight for power in America. And it's increasingly becoming a fight over who gets represented, whose vote actually counts. Now, on this show, we've described the current state of this country as kind of a cold civil war. Not a war with tanks in the streets, but a war over institutions and culture and information and ultimately politics and power. And in this war, the arms race is congressional seats. We've seen this war enacted from the time that Donald Trump called down to Texas and told those lawmakers to redraw the congressional maps in the middle of a decade, which is super unusual for them to do in order to increase the political power of the Republican Party. In addition to trying to gain those Republican seats in the midterms, they have also enacted this in states across the country in attempts to redraw lines, to strengthen the party's stronghold on power before voters even get the chance to do it in the ballot box. And then things have escalated over the last couple of weeks because the Supreme Court made the decision in the Louisiana versus Calais case to significantly weaken Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Now, let's be clear. Black people did not technically lose the right to vote. And this is important to say. Black people can still cast ballots. But the reason why Section 2 exists in the first place is because after the Civil Rights Movement, states were finding new ways to weaken Black political power without outright banning Black people from voting. It's one of those situations where they're like, we can't do the poll taxes anymore. We can't do literacy tests. We can't do intimidation taxes. Those are all illegal. So some states just simply shifted their strategy. Instead of stopping Black people from voting, they started drawing districts in ways and made sure Black communities had less political influence once they did vote. That process is called dilution. And nearly 6 years later, the same fight is back in front of us. And let's be honest about something. This is deeply partisan because Black voters overwhelmingly support Democrats. And many Republican-led legislatures understand that diluting Black voting power often strengthens Republican control. We saw this in Tennessee when they eliminated the only majority Black Democratic district in Memphis despite massive protests. We watched Alabama bring back maps that the Supreme Court had just rejected a couple of years ago, only for the court to allow them now. And meanwhile, in Virginia, voters approved changes through a referendum process. And the court decided that the will of the voters suddenly mattered less. But despite all of this, people are still showing up. People are organizing. People are marching. People are fighting for political power and participation across the South. And one of the things that we see consistently on this show is the ways in which people are showing up for democracy. Because when we show up, we win. And if you care about democracy, you can not only care every 4 years, you have to organize and engage. And yes, you have to vote, which is why I am so excited to have one of the organizers behind the All Roads Lead South March that took place this past weekend in Selma and Montgomery, Alabama, a movement focused on organizing, mobilizing, and building civic engagement across the South. Please help me welcome to Let's Be Clear, Amber Sherman.
Hi.
Amber, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Wayne?
I'm excited to have you, in the grand scheme of all the things that happened in the world. So we met last year at Essence Fest in New Orleans. That right? Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I was filming TikToks for y'all and everything.
Yes. And right away, we were having the conversation about the necessity of us like mobilizing people. And we weren't living at that point in a situation that felt as dire as this one. And I know, listen, anyone who is from Memphis, you don't meet them and they not tell you they from Memphis right away. So right away I knew that's where you were from. And of course, Memphis being such a moment and a center of some of this fight most recently. And so I just have to ask, as that was happening, like, what is the feeling of Memphians as you all are approaching this upcoming election?
Yeah, I mean, we're pissed off. I would say pissed off to the highest pistivity, to be specific. Folks are furious because, our congressional district has been chopped up into 3, and we were the only majority Black congressional district in the state of Tennessee. But I also think that anger is fueling a lot of people. I've never seen so many folks asking, like, how do they find their congressional district? I've never seen so many folks asking when the election is.
Yeah.
So I think people are definitely very much getting on their Zooms. They locking in.
Yeah.
We're going to see a huge turnout that we haven't seen before, but we also have been mobilizing voters to increase turnout for like the last 6 years here in Shelby County. And we actually had our largest turnout in a county primary just 2 weeks ago on the day they started the special session to chop up our maps. And so voters are paying attention. I think this is only fueling how they're going to turn out.
And I think, at least in my view, some of the hope of Republicans, and I would argue white supremacists, is to drive apathy is to make it so that folks feel like, well, what does it matter? Nothing's being done. No one cares about what's happening. And I think there was a Republican in South Carolina who said he didn't want to vote for them to redraw the maps because he was worried about an increase in Black participation. Because we are active, but we get active when you come for us.
We lock in.
Yes. And it became national news what was happening. And just seeing the protesters showing up in Nashville, making their voices heard, was unbelievably inspiring. And so we're going to talk about Montgomery and Selma in a second here, but I just want to ask you, in your mind, what's next in Memphis?
I mean, I think the main thing is definitely us mobilizing voters. I do think that they did this with the idea of, driving apathy, because the whole purpose is to dilute Black voting power. But if we're being realistic, there is no way to redraw our congressional maps in Tennessee and in most of the southern states without making the other congressional districts competitive. And they are so racist and so, gun-ho on being white supremacists, they are willing to do that. And so now they've made 4 congressional districts extremely competitive because they put us in the same district as multiple rural counties that don't really vote that much. And then also very large urban areas near Nashville. And that makes it actually easier for us as Memphis, as long as we show up heavily, we could flip the seat. And so I think that they were definitely hoping that we'd be more apathetic, because we were like, oh, see, they didn't just took our congressional district. We're done for. And I think they also were counting on us being uneducated, like not understanding what the 3 districts really meant and just being like, oh, I don't have a district anymore, I can't vote. And people are definitely not falling for that.
Right. And I think to that point, does their strategy also create a laissez-faire attitude for Republicans who feel like, well, we have 9 seats now, so I don't really need to show up because you've kind of made it so that it's just going to be okay, as opposed to your point, they've made some districts vulnerable, and that mobilization can actually, I think this is such an important point. I think people see these maps and they go, oh, Republicans won. No, if we show up, we can still win and flip these things. We've been screaming,
and we don't even have to show up in extreme numbers. If we have 40 to 50% turnout, we flip all 4 congressional districts. I run multiple equation simulations on Redistrictor with my friends, and we will be 1 to 2 points in between flipping the district. So we don't even actually need the entire district, the part of Memphis that's in the district. We don't even need the entire part of the city to show up. We only need 40 to 50%, and we will still flip it because there's so many people. And I think they severely underestimated the population of people here, because when you're creating a district, you have to make it proportional. And so they're making it proportional with only 250,000 plus voters in each district from Memphis. But you have to also include the people in Nashville. Williamson County is the richest county in Tennessee, and they put it in the 9th congressional district and part of it in the 8th congressional district. Why would they do something like that? I don't know. They're kind of stupid. But now they split up these rich people who have voted towards the left every election for the last few years. So they're very much vulnerable, and no one is getting true representation here. The rural voters are not going to get true representation because they're not being represented by someone who is only repping them. They're repping a very urban area in Memphis and parts of Nashville and a few counties in rural areas. So no one is being truly represented, and none of them are going to be contacted. Like they already have been saying, they don't feel like they will be reached out to. They don't feel like they'd be important because the Republican reps are just going to be going to areas in Memphis and in Nashville where there's a lot more voters.
Right. So you take that mobilization mindset, like you said, you started talking about these models, these simulation models, and I was like, listen, the nerd in me was like, okay, but then what happened? Like I go Steve Kornacki real quick and start pressing buttons in my head. You take that mindset and brought it down to Montgomery this past weekend, and to what I would argue is the fertile crescent of the civil rights movement is the Tallahatchie River. That whole area of Alabama is so important, from Birmingham to Montgomery to Selma down to Tuskegee. It's just the fertile ground of who we are and who we became as a people. So what was that moment like for you?
I mean, I think it was really just warming to see so many Black folks. It was warm, it was hot, but also really warmed my revolutionary spirit, seeing so many Black folks who of all different ages, who were really excited to mobilize. They were excited to get activated. We had a voter village where folks could go to different tables and get information, and they wiped all those tables out. They was getting information left and right. Like folks are very focused on how do I activate in my community, because we're not going to let what they did to us and what they're doing to Southern states stand. And I think that that's really important, because I do think that they were hoping for apathy. I think they're hoping for apathy for rural voters. They're hoping for apathy in these urban areas, and they're not going to get either. Realistically, I think that folks are going to turn up and show out way more than they expected. And I really just think that, like I said in my speech on Saturday, it's time to tap into our ancestral playbook. It's time for us to look at the folks who have already organized, our Fannie Lou Hamers, who organized the whole state of Mississippi around voting rights and got folks to the polls. We have to look at that same organizing and take those same tactics that still work today and employ them everywhere, all throughout the South. If we work that hard, we will turn out the percentage we need to turn out to flip those seats.
And I just want to name my commitment from a couple of places, right? I am a northerner now, right? I was born in Tuskegee, I lived in Kentucky for a while, but I've spent the majority of my life in Minnesota. And because of that rootage, I understand the necessity, right? As WB said, as goes the South, goes the country. I think that it's important for Northerners to actually pay attention to what is happening in the South, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I think it's important for Black men to pay attention to what's happening politically, because Black women have been carrying us politically for a very long time. And the not joke is like, we need to listen to Black women because y'all saved Alabama when they was gonna elect Walker, right? How many times have Black women stepped in and voted to ensure that stuff didn't happen? And then during the 2024 election, nobody wanted to listen to Black women. Back when they elected Fetterman up in Pennsylvania, nobody wanted to listen to Black women. So when
it should have been Malcolm. Shout out to my nigga Malcolm. I fuck with him. Like, he's an amazing legislator.
Yes, love Malcolm, right? So the idea for me is like, how can we as Black men be activated and connected without needing to be in charge, without leading with patriarchy? Like, I don't need to come in and be like, oh, I'm a man, y'all gotta listen to me, like, submission. It's like, no, there's been so much work that's been laid, political work that's been laid up until this point. And I don't think it's necessary for me to come in and try to take over. I think it's necessary for me to come in and support and connect and build bridges and leverage privilege. And so I think those two positional spaces I'm sitting in as a Northerner and as a Black man are two groups that truly need to be activated. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure those spaces are activated.
Yeah, I've already had folks who are up north also hitting me up. Like, I talked to some folks in Wisconsin and some other states who are talking about, like, how can they support what we're doing here? And I think the biggest thing is mobilizing. Like, you got a free weekend, or you free during the week, you want to make some calls, like jump on this phone bank. And I already told them I'll be hitting them up with some calls to action. But like, it's definitely going to take, all hands on deck from all over. But also it is going to take us listening to Black women organizers. Like I said, in my speech, we need to be, imploring the types of organizing that Fannie Lou Hamer used, the types of organizing that Polly Murray used. That is the reason why we have the board v. education case that, actually made it to the Supreme Court that actually desegregated schools. That was her legal analysis that made that happen. The reason why women are able, to work and, not be sexually discriminated against is because of Dr. Polly Murray. That's a Black woman who made that happen. Or your Claudette Colvins, who was an unconventional leader, but was still a leader. And because we're so, gung-ho around what the vision of a civil rights leader should look like, we ignore the unconventional people, like the fat Black women like me who organize in the South, who are winning campaigns and winning policies, but don't look the exact part of what we expect someone to look like when we think of a Rosa Parks or another civil rights leader. And so I really want to push people on that, because we have this beautiful, vast ancestral playbook that tells us exactly what we need to do. And we have to tap into it. There is no way we will win and mobilize the way we need to if we do not look at what other folks have already done. They have laid it out. They put it in all these books that's 800 plus pages long. I know they're long, but they're good. They're detailed. And it's necessary for us to do the slow, respectful work, like Charles Payne said, and read those books and study those tactics, because that's how we're going to win.
You answer my next question, which is, what is the next thing that people should do, right? What's the next step? I think, once again, living in Minnesota, there was a lot of conversation during the ICE occupation around what's the one thing we can do, whether it was mutual aid for, families at your school, whether it was training to be a legal observer, right? If you were to, if someone says, I don't know where to start, what would you say is the next step, the first step they can take to mobilize and to be activated in this work?
I would say the main thing is going to a phone bank training. Like if you can't come down here and canvas, you can phone bank. And there's going to be so many voters we're going to be calling that are inactive voters. Over half of the state of Tennessee is registered, but only like 1/12 is voting. And so we're going to be calling the 750,000 plus inactive voters throughout the state to let them know, hey, you have to vote in this upcoming election, because if you don't vote in this November election, that's a federal election, you're going to be purged from the voting system. So we need you to make sure you turn out to these elections, and we need all folks who are available to be making those calls. And then if you have time to come down and canvass a weekend, that would also be great for some of the target areas that we're trying to really, push Black voters to turn out in. You can also always donate to the orgs who are doing mobilizing work here, Black Voters Matter, which is where I work here in Tennessee, the Equity Alliance, Memphis for All, which is doing work in Memphis. Specifically, like all of those orgs are going to be doing lots of mobilizing and canvas programs that I'm going to be helping them with. And so we'll have opportunities for folks to come on the weekends to help, but also you can always do phone banking, and I'll always be available and posting phone banks I usually post them on Threads. So if someone's following me on like Instagram, you can follow me on Threads, and I will post phone bank links there that folks can hit up. But we definitely need people to call the inactive voters, because one of the biggest things is that our election commissions, especially in the South, they have no investment in voter outreach. So once you register to vote, they'll post the elections online. They don't reach out to voters. They don't remind them about elections. It's up to campaigns and nonprofits to do that. And campaigns are only going to reach out to the folks who always vote. They're going to reach out to the strong voters. So young Black people who aren't voting and really don't know there's an election happening never get reached out to. And so we're going to be having to do that work and make sure they know, hey, there's an election coming up. This is going to impact you. And this is how this impacts you as a millennial. Memphis is a majority millennial city also. So we need to increase the millennial turnout. And so we're going to be heavily focused on that too, because the things that are happening in Congress and within our like local state government are impacting millennials the most, because the funding that comes here, it really impacts the innovation that happens and like the infrastructure. And so we have to have Congress members that are responsive to that. And that looks like us contacting them. And normally you have to contact somebody at least 3 times to actually get them to show up, because sometimes they don't answer the phone. Then you have to canvass their house. You have to send them a mailer. We also have postcard parties that folks can participate in from anywhere. You can fill out the postcards and send them back to us. We'll send you the postage. So we do those too, and you can do them from your home and just write a personal note reminding someone about the election. We do them in person here in Memphis too. But the postcards are one of the things I hear about the most. People say, I came because I got that postcard in the mail, because our election commission does not send out any mailers. They don't send out any notifications. So it's really on us to remind people.
So, awesome. And you and I need to connect after this, because I want to make sure that like the link in my bio has some of this information so folks know exactly where to go. But tell the people where they can find you on both Instagram and Threads as you're posting these things.
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram at A is for Afro and TikTok. So I post the same name on all of them. And then I post on Threads too. And I usually post like things that are happening in Memphis or things people can do virtually as well. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, just DM me for the link if it feels like it got a little too public, because some of my posts get like a little too many like shares and I get nervous to post a link. So I'll say that, but I do pay attention to the DMs I send it to people. Because sometimes people be like sharing it and it's like hundreds. I'll be like, hold on, chill out.
I get that. Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for like leaning into this work, and thank you so much for coming on and telling all of us about it. Amber Sherman, everyone.
Peace out.
And before we go, one more thing.
Give me one more. Give me.
Okay, one more thing.
But we do have one more thing.
One more.
I'm actually really excited about this one more thing, because it's a follow-up to last week's one more thing, where we talked about Watertown High School in Wisconsin, a group of students who were doing a song called Mother of the Revolution that was written to pay homage to the people who participated in the Stonewall protests, and in particular, the trans activist Marsha P. Johnson. The school board decided that they were not going to be able to play that song at their spring concert because, in the school board's mind, it was controversial. Now, what we learned in this most recent week's school board meeting was that there was not a single parent complaint. As a matter of fact, the policy says that any type of school activity that has anything controversial has to go through a certain process. And the band director followed that process. He sent a letter home to parents and he let students have the opportunity to opt out. But even despite that, they did not stay. They said, the school board said that they could not do the song. That led to students walking out. That led to the national news showing up and talking about this particular high school and this band. Well, a wild thing is happening. Those students will get to perform that song. Now, the school board is still currently banning them from performing that song at the school, but they will be performing it at a local church there in Watertown, Wisconsin. And the coolest part is that the composer, Omar Thomas, is flying to Watertown and will be the band conductor for them as they play this song on Wednesday. So it's amazing to me that you have something that is trying to pay homage to a community of people. A group of people who are in power are trying to suppress it. And that suppression led to students organizing. That suppression led to the students walking out, to parents showing up at the school board to call the school board out. So the parents organizing. That led to the news media showing up and making this a national story. And that has now led to those students turning what was supposed to be something against them into an incredible moment. They would never have gotten in touch with the composer of this song had it not been for that moment. And I think there's a lesson in that, because when the students experienced this hardship, they stood up, they pushed back, they did what they needed to do. They showed that despite the power of the school board, they still have a voice. Listen, I know as a person who covers politics, politics is exhausting, especially in this era where everything is flooding the zone. But like we talked about in the rundown, there are things that feel like scams, but the scam only works if we participate in it. Like the conversation we just had with Amber Sherman. Yeah, the Supreme Court is doing this and Republicans are trying to do these different things, but my God, if we show up, we win. I understand the state of the country right now. I think it's important to remember that you do still have a voice. And sometimes the act of using it inspires somebody else to use theirs. So I want to encourage you, just like those students in Watertown, just like the folks who marched in Montgomery this weekend, just like every single iteration of Americans throughout history, use your voice, because if you do, we could change the world. I'm just Wayne. This has been Let's Be Clear. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I'll see you next week.
There is nothing that I wouldn't do.
Boy, your attention, please. Can I have your attention, please? Everybody just look at me. Everybody just look at me. I day trade attention. Shout out to Gary V. Respond to every mention. You can find me on your FYP before.